Once again, I'd like you to try this problem totally on your own, and then check in to either see if you're on the right track or if you're stuck and you need help. So please pause right now, see what you can get done on your own, and then resume the video. The problem says the table below shows 6 different sized pans that can be used to make macaroni and cheese. The ratio of ingredients must stay the same the whole time. Fill in the table. So let's take a look at our table. We've got a column for noodles, measured in cups, and a column for cheese, measured in cups. And this column represents our total amount of cups that we're going to have in our, the mass of our mac and cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and write total so I don't forget what that represents. And it's phrased, I phrased it here when I typed it as pan holds blank cups. So let's assume that we're using different size pans, and every time we use a pan, we put the maximum amount of food into the pan that we can. All right. So we need to find some constants of proportionality. Let's do that before we get started. All right. We don't have any row where all the values are filled out. But if you look at the second row, we have 3 cups of noodles and 3/4 of a cup of cheese. I can figure out that total. In fact, I don't even need a calculator because I know that that's going to give me 3 3/4 total cups, 3 3/4 total cups of food. All right. Now I need to find my constants of proportionality. I'd like you to find all 3. So we're going to do this by dividing, dividing to find the constant of proportionality, and then using logic to figure out which place it goes. So let's take 3 3/4. So what I'm asking myself is how many times does 3 go into 3/4? If you're not comfortable doing this on your own, you can take 3 divided by 3/4 on your calculator. When you do that, you get 4. So that makes sense. If I take 3 and I split it up into 4 groups, I get 3/4. So to go from the noodles column to the cheese column, we're going from a bigger number to a smaller number. I'm going to be dividing by 4. That tells me also that to go from the cheese column back to the noodles column, I'm going to multiply by that same number. Let's take a look at the cheese column and the total column. Cheese, I'm starting with 3/4 and I'm ending at 3 3/4. So let's go ahead and divide those. 3 3/4 divided by just 3/4. I get 5. So what that tells me is if I'm starting in the cheese column and I want to go to the total amount column, and I'm sorry my camera's having a hard time with this one. If I'm starting in my cheese column and I'd like to go to my total amount column, I'm getting larger. I'm starting with 3/4 and I'm ending with 3 3/4. And I know the constant that I got was 5, so I'm going to say times 5 to go from this column to the one on the far right. That means to go in the other direction, I'm going to have to divide by that number 5. So if you are watching this video because you were stuck and you needed a hint, I'm going to say try pausing the video right now and filling the rest of the table in on your own. If you're still not sure what to do, keep watching. So let's just go in order with the rows. My first row, I know that I'm holding 5 total cups. I also know, because of what I just wrote down here, that to go from my total column to my cheese column, I need to divide by 5. I don't need a calculator for that. 5 divided by 5 is 1. I also know that to go from my cheese column to my noodles column, I'm going to multiply by 4. And again, I don't need a calculator. 1 times 4 is 4. And I should be able to check that. 4 plus 1 is 5. So in fact, that does add up. Haha, pun intended. Okay. Let's look at this next line that's not complete. We're talking about 1/4 a cup of cheese. I shouldn't need a calculator to tell me that 1/4 times 4 is 1. So that means I'm taking 1 cup of noodles. And knowing those two numbers, I can just add them together and get 1 1/4 for my total. But if you're not sure, you can check that because 1/4 times 5 does in fact equal my total. And I realize now that we never found the constant of proportionality between noodles and my total. You can find that on your own though. All right, 2/3 a cup of noodles. I'm dividing that by 4. This might be an appropriate time for your calculator, but you could also figure it out by hand. 2/3 divided by 4 gives me 1/6. So I'm talking about 2/3 a cup of noodles plus 1/6 for my total. That's 4/6 plus 1/6, which is 5/6 of a cup. Let's do the same here. 5 1/3. I need to find the amount of cheese, so I'm going to take 5 1/3 divided by 4. And that gives me 1 1/3. I can add these in my head. I know that the whole numbers are going to add to 6, and those fractions are going to add to 2/3. The very last column is really the only time I need this 5 constant of proportionality. So 5 5/8. To figure out the amount of cheese, I'm going to divide by 5. You don't need a calculator for that either. We can just divide that whole thing by 5. 5/8, 1/5 of that is going to be 1/8, and 1/5 of 5 is going to be 1. And then I can also subtract in my head going backwards to the noodles and cups. 5/8 minus 1/8 is 4/8, which is 1/2. And 5 minus 1 is 4, so 4 1/2 cups of noodles.